Hello and welcome to the big picture. The Gujarat government is going ahead and making voting compulsory for all voters in the local body elections. 7 municipal corporations and 300 other local bodies will go to polls by October this year. Gujarat had passed a law making voting mandatory in 2009 when Narendra Modi was the chief minister. However, it had not been cleared by then Governor Kamala Beniwal, holding that the law was against the principle of individual liberty. The Gujarat government, however, has got it passed late last year after a new governor was appointed. And now it is going ahead and notifying the act, which not only will make voting compulsory, but also providing for 50% reservation for women in these local bodies. While the women reservation has been welcomed, the compulsory voting law has found mixed reactions. So we will discuss today the pros and cons of having such a law and how effectively it can be implemented. To discuss this, I have with me Nikhil, social activist and member Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sanghatan; Vikas Singh, former Additional Solicitor General of India; Dilip Patel, BJP MP from Anand in Gujarat, will be on the phone line; and Ashok, Tandon, senior journalist. Welcome to all of you. Patel ji, can you hear me? Okay, I think we'll get him a little later. Vikas Singh, as far as the law is concerned, you think that this is a law which will hold water? One. Second thing is, what is your whole approach towards the idea of compulsory voting?
Well, in a nation where voting percentage has largely been very low in the region of 50 to 60%, I think it's a very welcome move, and it is not that the first time such kind of law is being, brought in India. This is a law actually which is existing in 22 countries of the world. And in fact, Belgium started with a law of a similar law in 1892. So they have this law for more than 100 years now, 100 and about 30 years, 20 years now. This is a law where unless you provide for sanctions, that there's some penal provision will have to be provided for non-voters, then only the law will have to be successful. The idea behind this law is that whenever a voting is to take place or an election is to take place, the state machinery has to spend a huge amount of money to educate the voters, requesting them to cast their franchise. Now, instead of doing that, instead of spending money on that, once you have a law of this kind in place, and if you have proper sanctions, like for instance, in some of the countries there is a provision of fine. In some of the countries, if you don't pay the fine, there is also, like Australia has a provision for even being sent to jail. And there are also some countries where you get disenfranchised if you don't cast your vote for 2 or 3 times consecutively. So if you have proper sanctions in place, it will be, I think, a very welcome way of increasing the percentage of voting at our elections. And that is always laudable. Nobody can have any dispute with the proposition that the higher the vote, the better the democracy, the better the health of the democracy, the better the people's mandate being reflected in the people who govern the country.
Okay.
So I think as far as the legal aspect is concerned, this law, I'm sure, will face the legal muster, and it will all depend on what kind of sanctions they will bring in the law for
absolutely
non-compliance.
Okay. Nikhil, Vikas Singh was talking about many countries having this law. Actually, 13 countries are now, actually implementing this law. There are some 14, 15 countries which have law on their statute, but they are not implementing it, including Belgium, which he mentioned. But as far as India is concerned, you work in rural areas, because this compulsory voting thing, will it be different in urban areas and rural areas?
Yeah, I think it will be different in India. I think it's a terrible proposition. I don't agree with Mr. Vikas Singh at all. I think by having sanctions and making people vote, I think you have a right to vote, absolutely, and you have a right not to vote. And you have now
Right to
introduced...
vote. Does right to vote include right not to vote?
Of course it does. That is
the
what...
constitutional mandate.
Of course, the constitutional mandate must include the fact that you have a right to vote as well as a right, yes, certainly also to say nota and cast a nota vote, or not go to that polling booth because you don't feel like going. You don't like any of those candidates. You don't want to go. You're expressing your dissent in a democratic dissent in another way. And to have sanctions brought upon people and saying that, okay, this is how our numbers are going up. Actually, the Election Commission spends money not just on getting people to the polling booth. Of course, you should encourage people to vote, and we all do encourage people to vote. But if they still say, no, we don't want to vote, we don't have faith in the candidates who are there, or we find ourselves not wanting to go, that is their constitutional right, democratic right in any case, and it must be protected. And on the other hand, you could say on the point of a gun, we'll have 99% voting. Is that any kind of democracy? It's the opposite of democracy. So the question on rule, and then what we do in this country, every single experiment, every single experiment is unloaded upon civic elections, on panchayat elections. Two-child norm, panchayat elections first. You have now in Rajasthan, 8वीं pass hona hai. That's again on panchayat elections. And now you have this compulsory voting on civic elections. I think that there is something that we must do. Candidates have political parties and candidates have a duty to make sure that people come by them saying that there is something for you to vote for. That's the political process. That's the democratic process. Not a process
mandatory way of trying to do
not
it.
A force. Not sanctions and force.
Okay.
And we will be disenfranchising much more poor people, much more people who migrate in rural areas.
We'll come to this aspect of it a little later. We have now with us KJ Rao. KJ Rao was the former advisor to the Election Commission of India. Mr. Rao, Mr. Rao, this whole concept of compulsory voting, has it been discussed in the Election Commission in the past? What has been the opinion of the Election Commission, if it has had any, and what are the various advantages and disadvantages of this?
You see, the matter was discussed in the Election Commission much earlier, and as you all know, Indian democracy is the largest in the world, and with such a huge electorate, it is very, very difficult to implement compulsory voting in India, and that is the opinion of that was the opinion of the Election Commission earlier, and I think even now also the Election Commission is maybe of the same view, because see, is there going to be any penalty if a person doesn't vote?
Apparently, there's going to be.
How can it be?
Apparently, as far as the sorry, Mr. Rao, as far as the Gujarat law is concerned, there has to be a penalty. Otherwise, what is the meaning of compulsory voting without penalty? And
how
we
are
are
you
told
going to implement it? How many court cases would be there?
Though we don't know, though we really don't know, because the rules which have to be framed as far as the penalty is concerned is not yet in the public domain as far as Gujarat is concerned.
Yes, and until and unless the penalty point is not there, then of course nothing. What will the returning officer do? What power he has got to do? See, that's all. This should all be, an act has to be brought in, has to be amended, and also rules have to be framed. So many things are there. And it's a different matter for the civic elections, maybe a small electorate, but for a parliamentary constituency or for an assembly constituency to implement it is very difficult. It is not practicable in a country like India. Maybe it may be there in small countries that you cannot compare this one, our country with other small countries, that you can't control. So I feel definitely that is not practicable, it is neither practicable nor feasible in a country like India.
Okay. Ashok Tandon, how do you look at this? Because there are two aspects to this debate, and this debate has been going on. See, one, if you make it mandatory, you will have a better mandate. The persons who rule will have a better mandate. The thing is that it will reflect the mood of the entire country, not like now only 60-70% people vote.
See, first of all, we should not see this law as some kind of a coercive thing. In fact, I totally disagree with the term used by one of my friends as sanction. basically the spirit
Penalty.
behind...
We'll call it penalty.
No,
They are called
one
penalties.
of my friends used the word
Yes.
sanction.
Okay.
I totally disagree, because as I understand this law, it is basically, the spirit behind this law is persuasive. It's not to impose sanctions or anything. The idea is that in India, a large number of people take this electoral thing as very lightly. And particularly in urban areas, the middle class and the affluent people, they just don't go to vote and ignore it. So idea behind and the spirit behind this law is to persuade people to go and vote. Now to do that, see, like it's an attendance in a school or a college. No, it's nobody's case that there should not be any attendance in school or colleges, but the idea behind attendance is not to debar students from appearing in examination. So idea behind this spirit, according to me, is to persuade people, educate people, create awareness, and make it mandatory. And in case, see, even the Gujarat law, the rules have yet to be framed about the penalty.
Yes.
Now, if the penalty is token, say for instance, if you don't vote in 2 elections, you may be debarred from or you may be disfranchised. It's not a penalty. I don't think there is going to be any penalty which is punitive in action. No,
if there is no punitive, then how can you make it compulsory?
If I lose my voting right by not going
that
to
is punitive.
No, but still, this
punitive.
but this much of penalty people deserve who are not going to vote. So it's not a sanction, or it's not even monetary penalty. It's not sending somebody to jail. If I am not going to vote, well, the authorities decide in their wisdom, enact a law to debar me for another 2 elections. So should I be opposing that? I think let's all agree that we need to create awareness in this country for people to go and vote voluntarily.
Okay.
So if they need to be persuaded, let political parties persuade them. In fact, if you have looked at the last few elections, the turnout has been so massive.
Without a compulsory voting test.
No, but see, as I said, let's not look at the word compulsory as coercive. I know for certain in Delhi, particularly in urban areas, Mumbai, middle class and upper middle class and affluent people don't go. They don't care about election. So if they are debarred for 2-3 elections, I don't think...
You think they'll learn a lesson?
They will learn a lesson. And if they just even then ignore about it, oh no, let them be defranchised. So I think let's not
Mr. Vikas Singh, is that the way the penalty system would work or should work?
Girish, before that, only one small thing, because immediately after me, the speaker who said, in favor of or against this compulsory voting, there is no constitutional right in any citizen to say that he has a right not to vote. He may have a right to go and use the nota button, that's a different matter, but he still does go and vote. There is no legal right or constitutional right for anybody to say that he has a right not to vote. And by not going to the election, he is exercising some kind of a supreme right which is there in a democracy. It's something,
Vikas, 1 second,
completely contrary to the...
Vikas, sorry to intervene. Article 21. What about Article 21? What does the spirit of Article 21? Don't you think this will violate?
21 doesn't... No, that liberty doesn't extend...
Yeah, please continue.
To say that I will not vote. The liberty of going. Why do you have a nota button? Nota button is that I don't like any candidate. But you have I would say it's a duty of every citizen of any country to exercise his franchise. So that's something which is implicit. People are still not doing it. People take elections very casually. People feel that my vote will not make a difference. People have other things lined up on an election day. And they don't go for vote for that reason because they are attending to something according to them, some more personal important reason. But nobody can say that he has a right not to vote. There is no right under the constitution which anybody can claim, whether it be 21 or 19 or 14 or any right. That is one.
Yeah.
The second part is that as far as the penalty provision is concerned, the penalty provision will have to be something Like one of them is disenfranchising. Now, if you are not interested in voting, then you don't want to exercise the right to vote in future, and accordingly you are disenfranchised for the next 10 years. That could be one way of, sort of discouraging people from not exercising their right to vote. The other penalty could be a fine. Third penalty could be, sort of you are out of the public distribution system. There could be so many penalties which the state can prescribe for people who do not exercise the right of franchise, because it's very integral to a democratic polity that everybody should endeavor to vote. Let me put it like this. Somebody has a good excuse in all those countries wherever they've made it mandatory.
Here also they're talking about that.
There is always an excuse which you can give, which the authorities, if they find, yes, they will have to be. That will have to be an infirm person, somebody in hospital, somebody, on front duty, army man who's, away on duty, or somebody attending to an essential services. Those are cases will have to be exempted, and no penalty or penal provision can come to them.
Okay.
But it can't be said in any democracy that I have a right not to vote.
Okay.
That I think is
Nikhil.
completely contrary to the democratic system of...
No, he's challenging that Article 19 or 21 or 14.
So I don't want to go into the technicalities of Article 14, 19 or 21. I believe that freedom of expression is certainly...
No, but without
one second. But I think it's a real irony that the sanction says that you will not be allowed to vote. So actually the state has a right to tell you, you don't have a right. Because you did not turn up at a polling booth, the state has the right to sanction you, not the capacity to vote because you haven't turned up once or twice.
To take away your right to vote.
Which I believe is the big thing that we need to defend. We need to defend everyone's right to vote. We need to create an atmosphere where everyone wants to vote. We need to give space and we need to give space to people to say that I am not going to vote. Even if they are lazy, it is still a reflection of whatever it is that our citizenry is. But our citizenry is not bound. It is not bound, to my mind, by a duty to go and vote. It is bound by a duty to participate in many, many things. If we start extending that civic sense and civic duty to many things, we will actually have a draconian state. Number two, it is a completely impractical, as Mr. Rao said, completely impractical. And if you start putting any kinds of sanctions and excuses, we know so many laws that are not, we don't have the capacities to implement them. And you will have people, some being favored, some not being favored, some being persecuted.
That danger of discrimination in the way.
And that is again in violation of Article 14.
Mr. Rao, how do you react to this? Apart from the practicalities of the implementation, which obviously, one of the things which I've read, but since it is not still in the public domain, what kind of penalties or what kind of, sanctions, which Ashok doesn't like that language to be used, but penalties. One of the things is that if a person doesn't vote, then he has to explain to the officer concerned or why he did not vote. How is this going to be implemented? And also the other problems. Mr. Rao? Mr. Rao is, I think, is disconnected. Ashok, let us come to, you have made your arguments in favor of it. Now let us come to the practicalities of it, of implementing. Let us assume they are saying that, a person who has not voted will have to give in writing to the concerned officer why he didn't vote. Give some reasons, health reason, whatever reason, blah, blah.
See, I will again say something. See, sometimes you enact laws which is more educative in nature. It's basically to create awareness. Just
one second. One small thing.
For instance,
one small thing before you go ahead. Or as it is, the Election Commission of India in the last 10-15 years has done a remarkable job of educating voters.
Agree.
Which has resulted in a higher percentage of voting in every election after election. We have witnessed this. So why do you need a law to educate voters?
See, that's what I was trying to say. Sometimes we enact laws like traffic rules to create more awareness, and then we give them space. Okay, we are educating you for 6 months. If you don't stop drink driving, you don't wear helmet, you will be penalized. and there is a tremendous impact of that. So I have a feeling this law is basically to create awareness among people to come.
It is not to be implemented.
No, then after a notice period, well, there could be a punitive action also. But sometimes when we enact laws, they generate awareness among people also, and the fear of law to some extent also helps in that.
Will help.
So therefore, I would not like to consider this law as something which is intrusive or which is coercive. It is mainly to create further awareness among the people, and I hope this law, when enacted, will be implemented in such a way that there is a scope for people to get educated, be aware and go to the poll, and maybe you don't have even to do any kind of a punitive action also.
Mr. Rao, you must have heard what Vikas Singh said, and the fact of penalties. The second thing is of the practicalities of its implementation.
Yes. The point is, it is very difficult to implement. I say already there are so many cases in various courts. Will you have any special courts for this? Or how it has to be implemented? Who is going to file the FIR?
No, it is not a FIR.
Will the election commission do the elections, or will it be involved in this work? Who is going to do that? So that practicability will have to be seen, I say.
No, apart from, sir, one second. Let us not get into the nitty-gritties of it, but as far as the question of disenfranchising the voter is concerned, if he doesn't vote, say, twice or thrice or whatever the rules, we don't know what the Gujarat government's rules is going to be. We'll have to wait and watch for that. But the whole idea of disenfranchisement, what do you think of that?
No, can you? That is absolutely. I think it is not practicable at all. It cannot be implemented. I am sure about it for the simple reason. You see the elections, how many people may not vote, and what action is going to be taken? Are they going to fine? Even if the fine has to be paid, there has to be some FIR or something like that. It has to be there. And suppose fine is okay. If it is 100 rupees or somebody, then the people may not simply they pay the fine and then get rid of it. And the imposing a penalty of defranchising, I don't think that the law will be. It will state this one, the examination of the courts. I'm sure that they will not agree.
What about Ashok Tandon's argument that this law is basically trying to be persuasive? It is not. It will persuade people to.
No. A law cannot be like that. Law is a law. You see, you cannot simply say that the law is there. Be careful, otherwise we are going to take action. Like threatening, who is going to take an issue that notice to that? Every person has to be issued a notice before any action is taken. Then who is going to issue the notice? That practicability, please, everyone should understand it. You may say, yes, it is a very good thing. And another, I understand that some person has I'm sorry, I did not hear that. And he has said that, the political parties should be asked to do that one. They do not do it. Say, political parties, do you mean to say that they will go and encourage the people to go and vote? Only on the day of poll they may go and do it, but they will not do any publicity or anything like that. The political parties, as we have seen there.
No, Mr. Rao. So your objection to this is it only because the practical problems which it will face in implementing it, or do you have a problem with the entire idea and the entire theory behind this?
Yeah, entire idea in the sense when it cannot be implemented. You have to think about the pros and cons. You have to think about the pros. Simply you can't amend a law. By amending the law, you have to find out what is going to happen. You have to think about it. Then only you can implement the law. Suppose you want to think about a penalty. What penalty you are going to impose?
Okay.
And how is it going to be done? That is the entire idea itself. I think it has been discussed a number of times. I think we should put a full stop to that.
No, but it's not a question of putting full stop. In fact, the Gujarat government is going to implement it in October when it's going to hold elections for the local bodies.
I had already said that. Without it, suppose nothing. As on date, you say that nothing is there in the act about the penalty. suppose somebody
that whole penalty thing apparently is going to come in the next couple of months before the elections.
Yes,
anyway,
that is.
Okay, so Mr. Rao, let me get.
Will not vote. Many people will not. What are you going to do?
Let me get Vikas. Yes, Vikas Singh.
Well, Mr. Rao is looking at it as a problem of the Election Commission. Who has said that this is to be done by the Election Commission? This whether you vote or not, today everything is computerized, and today it can be by a press of button you can come to know whether you voted or not voted.
Okay.
With the systems that can be developed in future, this can be made even more precise and more accurate. So, Mr. Kejriwal is dealing with it as if it's a law which Election Commission has to bring in or Election Commission has to enforce. Nobody is saying that. Election Commission may think that this is not possible from the job that they have in hand and the enormity of job that they are already doing. But it is not that the Election Commission is supposed to implement this law. This law will have to be implemented by the state, which gives you the voter card, which has a right to put some penalty on you, supposing if it is given to the area magistrate, and he will, after the voting is over, he will come to know who all have not voted.
Yes, so they will,
some show cause notices will go to them. It has nothing to do with the election in that sense.
Okay.
No, who is going to do that? That is again.
So practicality is nothing to do as far as the Election Commission is concerned.
Okay, I think we got your point, because because we got
Election Commission is
one minute.
Yes, Mr. Rao.
I want to say one thing. I know it is not the Election Commission. He says, the responsibility will be given to whom? Who is there?
District authorities.
Is it going to be a Tahsildar or somebody like that? Again, he is an officer of the Election Commission.
Yes.
And during the elections. After the elections, you want to do something, and you mean to say that
during the election,
will be done in the court.
This will have to be done after the election.
Number of cases,
okay, sir.
Handle all those things.
Nikhil,
anyway,
the question.
The point,
okay, no.
Girish,
yes, very quick.
Election Commission have no right to say that.
No, election. It's not just a question of Election Commission. We are on slippery.
The point that I'm wanting to make is that.
Yes,
and they have no right to say that please put a full stop to this, because it is not their domain, basically.
Nikhil, the
lawmaking is the domain of the parliament.
We are on slippery grounds when what Vikas Singh is saying. Okay, Vikas Singh, I think we got a point. What Vikas Singh, we are slippery grounds. Who will implement this? It will ultimately come to the state government authorities, Tahsildar, whoever it is. Anyway, these are very complicated matters. But on the whole, on the issue of compulsory voting, you think that time is not right. Is that what you're trying to say? Or you think that this kind of a law should never be implemented?
I think it's conceptually wrong. I think it's against the norms of democracy. I think democracy... That's my opinion, sir. It's my opinion that it's against the norms of democracy, because democracy says I vote for whom I want to because I'm persuaded to do so. And that's what brings me to the ballot box. Today we have Gram Sabhas where decision-making is supposed to take place. I go there if I want to. But you can't put a gun to my head and say you will go there to take the decision. That is to my mind, against the norms of democracy. But I also want to ask Mr. Vikas Singh, who is going to pay what penalty when those hundreds of people line up and because their ID card is not right, or because their registration did not take place right, or because their names were not on the rolls, they cannot vote, and they didn't manage to vote? Who is going to pay the penalty? The state will pay the penalty to them, and will the state get
very quickly, the last one.
So there are people wanting to vote. Let's get them, allow them to vote.
First, let us get people who want to vote to vote.
Yeah, but Girish, one thing. See, there is a chapter on duties, fundamental duties of the citizen.
That can I answer?
And the citizens are supposed
Vikas, one second.
Under this law,
Vikas, one second, please.
Citizens are supposed to be obeying those duties or following those duties.
So you think this should be part of the fundamental duties?
Yes, it is. And therefore, if some law is there to educate the citizens about their duties, make them aware about their duty.
Okay.
See, I will equate with when helmet was being made compulsory, people had raised similar questions. But there were NGOs and then punitive action. All helped them to people to go for helmet.
Sorry,
I think similarly this act
completely ran out of time, but I don't know whether we can equate right to vote or not to vote with wearing helmets. But anyway, this is a fascinating debate. I hope there will be more such debates before this law is actually implemented. We'll have to wait and watch what will happen in Gujarat. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time tomorrow.